Good morning. And to the rest of you, good morning. How many of you, before we get too started, just out of curiosity, curious here, how many of you never have seen me present in person before? Show of hands. Wow, it would be like almost all of you. Okay. Well, traveling the world, think I'm famous, show up here. Not so much. Anyway, we're going to have a good time. Again, this is a rare privilege for me. We're streaming this live, so welcome to each and every one of you out there, wherever home is. We welcome you here. We're in Kansas City live on this extraordinary Friday, making Isagenix history. And yet today we're going to invest some time talking about perhaps one of the most powerful portions of your business, which is your why. Any of you wonder why you're here, what this is all about, what you're trying to accomplish? Has that ever crossed your mind? Why? You know, let me start by telling you how I ended up here. It was a little over now 29 years ago, if you can believe it. Last month, 29 years, someone handed me a little audio cassette tape with a brief message. Here, I'd like it back when you're finished. I liked the message I heard as I traveled back and forth from my home to my office in downtown Seattle, listening to that little cassette tape repetitively. And so when I was asked to go to the typical opportunity presentation, I said yes. You know, things were very different 29 years ago, back when we had to walk uphill both ways to the opportunity presentation. There was no internet. They hadn't invented it. I guess Al Gore hadn't thought of that yet. We didn't have the technology. We couldn't text or tweet or do any of those things. So you literally had to get dressed up and go to the Holiday Inn on like a Monday or a Tuesday night, and you had to sit there and they would tell you things and you'd go, okay. And it just made sense to me, so I got involved in the profession. I thought this just makes sense. Because for me, all I was trying to accomplish all those years ago was to earn an extra $400 a month. That was the goal for the family. My wife and I had made a decision that when our son was born, that she would stay home with him. And so we were trying to replace an income. And that was a really, really tough time for us economically, trying to figure out where that extra money would come from. So that was really my only question at that moment in time. Do you think I can earn an extra $400? Now, that particular company only lasted about 30 days. I came home and I shared the idea with my wife, who apparently had taken a different class. See, no one had told me network marketing, not so good. You know, network marketing, run if they talk with you. You know, this is a really bad idea. I didn't have that class. My wife apparently had taken that class. So, you know, when I came home and said, this is what we're doing, I think I found the solution to our challenges. It was not met with the same level of receptiveness I would have imagined. You know, I kind of refer to that as my first kiss. Any of you remember your first kiss? Any of you still with that person? No? Me neither. So, you know, but I like the concept of kissing, and so I thought, you know, I'll go off and I'll look for someone else to kiss. And so they say, if you seek, you'll find. So, you know, I found another one, and we started spending some time together, and one thing led to another, and then I thought, well, their family turned out to be crazy, so we had to move on. But, you know, you keep looking and you can find it. Now, you realize, of course, this is a metaphor to my business side of things, not story of my life, right? The kiss. Yeah, okay, good. Just checking. But eventually we found a business that we could both get involved in. We started working that particular company, and then we got that money. The $400 came. It was, you know, the car payment, then it was the house payment. In about 13 months, things were starting to really look up. And that's how I became involved in this profession so many years ago. But you know, as I was growing the business, I took a little time off, 3 years, to become the editor-in-chief of a publication called Upline. And it was there that I met some very interesting people within our chosen profession. Individuals making $20, $30, $40, $50,000 a month on the low side. And some of the stories, some were extraordinary, $200, $300, $400,000 a month and more, seriously. And some of these people, not all of them, but some weren't that bright. And I kept thinking to myself, wow, you know, I'm sitting here trying to decide if this sentence should end in a period, colon, semicolon, be deleted altogether. And some of these people I was interviewing, making this kind of money, not that bright, I thought I need to get out of this and get back into the profession. So I did. We walked away and we got back involved in the business, and one conversation at a time, one presentation at a time, one association at a time, and over time we built one of the largest businesses in our profession. Now, I thought everything had turned out okay for me. 2003, we retired. My wife and I decided how we were going to spend the rest of our lives. I came up with this unique little plan. We took the calendar, 365 days. I kept 65 days for myself, 300 days for the family. So 300 days a year, I woke up with my wife. We had coffee, we had breakfast together, we would go places together, do things together, hang out 300 days. 300 days, every morning, 300 days. That's a lot, 300 days. What are we going to do today? I don't know. Maybe we should go to coffee and figure it out. It's a lot, 300 days. So those 65 days came in really handy. You know, you should go somewhere. Yes, I'm going to go somewhere. So I'd fly off somewhere, and I would go give a presentation, talk to some people, and that worked out well. I'd come home with some stories. We got to go back. Sometimes we go back together. Sometimes, you know, I'd be home for another 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks, and she would say, and I would leave again. And it just worked out well. It worked out really well. But during that time, something I didn't expect occurred. Our children, I mean, I guess I could have thought this through, but our kids grew up. I hadn't really processed that. You know, every year they get a little older. And so as they continue to grow, they eventually got married and had children of their own. And so as you heard the introduction, you know, our son now married, little 7-year-old boy, our daughter and her husband, little 6-year-old and 4-year-old. So we've got these grandkids now. And the disconnect between what my wife and I have been able to create and what our children have is different. So we were looking for a way to kind of bring things together. And I was looking for a business. And so for about the last 8 years, I kind of had my mind and my eyes open. You know, what about this? What about that? Couldn't find it. Kept looking. And eventually, Warren Lance talked me into coming and taking a look at this particular company, Isagenix. And I'm so extraordinarily glad that he did, because this ended up becoming for us home. And it's good to be home, I've got to tell you. It's good to be home. So for those of you where this is your first experience, you did extraordinarily well. I mean, come on. Unbelievable. But along that journey, let me back up just for a moment. So when I'm there at Upline Magazine, I met this individual, became a mentor of mine, ended up working with him for about 10 years and building that business I referred to earlier. And he gave me one of the most profound phrases of all time. It really impacted me. And if you're taking notes, this might be worthy of recording, because I personally think it's worthy of remembering. And he said to me, Michael, if your why is strong enough, you'll figure out how. That's all I learned. If your why is strong enough, you will figure out how. Now, if I gave that to you and we just kind of concluded today and you walked out of here and it was the only note you had and you literally allowed this to affect you like it affected me, I promise you over time, you would be just fine. Because indeed, if your why is strong enough, you will figure out how. You'll attend the events like I See You. You'll go to Celebration. You'll be at New Year's kickoff. You'll pick up the books. You'll talk to the people. You'll listen to the podcasts. You'll be around the individuals in the hallways. You'll get up early. You'll stay up late. You'll do whatever it is to find the conference calls, to get in front of the people, to do whatever it takes. You'll do what it takes if your why is strong enough. But here's the problem with most of us. We don't know why we're here, which is a problem. And you think, well, shouldn't we be able to figure it out? How hard could that be? I mean, for me, it was easy. $400. It wasn't complicated. That's all I wanted, $400. And then you come to some of these classes. Now, if you've taught some of these, and we've got some extraordinary leaders in the room, I promise you I'm not picking on you, just my observation. But we come to some of these classes, and we start talking about how to create a compelling why. And we talk about what we've done to do it. I remember being at a seminar years ago, surrounded by tens of thousands of people, had the large screens like we have here in Kansas City, and the woman was on stage telling her story why. It was her children, and you saw the tears just streaming down her face as she was talking about, they had pictures of her kids up on the screen. These are my reasons why. And everyone was just kind of choked up because it was a really touching story. And then I went home and looked at my kids. You know, and I thought, I mean, I've got great kids, but it just nothing happen. And so I thought, I don't know how to teach that. How do you teach it? You know, some people work this business so they can spend more time with their families, and some people work this business so they don't have to. I mean, I haven't met your family yet. I don't know where you are in which camp, but I know that it's very, very difficult. But it shouldn't be that hard. It really shouldn't be that hard until one day I had an epiphany, and I began to realize why I think it's more difficult than we actually believe. I started noticing when I was having food with people, and I tend to eat out fairly frequently, maybe you do too, you know, the occasional lunch out 5-6 times a week, and dinner, you know, about half a dozen times or so. You know, we eat out every once in a while. And as I was eating with a variety of people, they would always do the classic thing. It's not complicated. They bring you a menu. And then they say, we'll take your drink order, and people are, I'm not really sure what I want to drink. You're not really sure what you want to drink. How can you not know what you want to drink? It's a beverage. Choose. They're here. Pick something. But, oh, no, we need a minute. Okay. And they'll peruse the menu. They're like, oh, look at this. I could have this. Oh, I probably shouldn't have that. And they turn the page. Oh, maybe that one. No, I don't think. And the wait person comes back. Can I get your drink order? Oh, you need another minute? It's food. Pick something. But they can't do it. And you realize if we can't pick a beverage, if we can't pick a starter, if we can't pick an entree, if you can't choose a dessert, choose. It's not hard. I eat 3 times a day every day, sometimes more. I've been around on this planet for more than half a century. Do the math. That's over 50,000 meals I've had in my lifetime. This is one meal. Pick something. They're there at your table. It's not hard. But we can't do it. We have to send them away 2, 3, 4 times. I usually know what I want before I go. I'm going to a fish place. Do you have fish? Yes. What kind of fish do you recommend? We've got this. I'll take it. And they're like, I don't know. I need a minute. Okay. So if we're thinking about this, if it's that difficult for most people just to figure out what they want to have for food, now we say, here's what I'd like you to do after you've consumed that meal. Take some time to reflect. Ponder on where you are, where you'd like to be, how you would like things to be arranged, and get deep down inside and come up with that really compelling reason that'll just drive you forward. People are like, okay. And then they go home, and what do you think they do? Nothing. They don't do anything. And so I learned a shortcut over the years, which was simply this. Go for the money. It's just not that hard. Just go for the money. If you want to know why you're here, it's for the money. Now, if you want to do something really fun with the money, like start an orphanage, give to a charity, donate to a good cause, give back to the people at, hurricane stand up, if you want, fantastic, but guess what you're going to need? Money. Just go for the money. Why are you here? The money. It's easier. It's just short. Go for the money. 4 words. We can usually learn that. Most of you wouldn't even have to write that down. All you have to decide is how much money. Now that you will have to figure out. And in the beginning, let me give you, just since I'm here, I'll throw this in for free, since I'm already here. But let me tell you the 2 biggest mistakes that we actually end up making in our profession. If you're new, this is good information. You may want to write this down. The 2 biggest mistakes we make. Mistake number 1 is we overestimate what we can earn in year 1. This is very typical, very common. You sit down with somebody very excited, they're reading some of the stories about the millionaires. They've just got back from an event. Maybe they're sitting at a little conference like this, and they walk away thinking, 6 figures first year, no problem. And there's nothing wrong with that. And we've got enough stories in this room to substantiate the fact that's probably what? Possible. Oh, it's more than possible. We know that people can do it. We see people do it all of the time. But rule number 1 is most people will overestimate. They'll just guess too high year 1, which creates frustration and a lot of angst. They don't get there. And then instead of thinking, what's wrong with me, or what's wrong with them, they start thinking, what's wrong with me? And they leave the business much too soon. But the second interesting little facet, little tidbit of our profession? We overestimate year 1. Here's the other thing we do, which is really interesting. We tend to underestimate year 5. Very few people that are sitting here today that are new have really contemplated what's possible in this business 5 years from today. Very few. Millionaire. How does that sound to those of you here in the room? Millionaire. Obtainable goal in 5 years? My personal opinion, for every person here. For every person here. But first year depends on where you've come from. First year depends on what you have going on. First year depends on what you're going to be able to invest. First year, whether you've got experience, whether you have some things, whether you have a strong, compelling reason. But for me, what was the shortcut? Strong, compelling reason was simply go for the money. Mine was $400. I had an absolutely clear, focused opinion on where I needed to go. So if you've got a dollar figure, and by the way, if you don't, whether you're listening here live or you're listening live out there, decide right now, how much money are you going to go for? And if you know the trainings that I have taught over the years, you're probably also familiar that we build our businesses as we indeed live our lives in 90-day blocks of time. So if we were having this conversation, I would say, this is November, so December, January, February, about this time in February, what do you want to be earning? That's about how far we really want to project. Where do you want to be with Isagenix about 90 days from today? Where? And then guess what? That day will most certainly arrive, and when it does, we need to do a little plan, do, review, adjust, repeat. We need to take those little words and incorporate them into our business and into our lives. We need to plan, of course, that's 90 days out. We need to do, that's the activity part. We're going to talk about that a little bit more tomorrow. We need to review at the end of the 90 days. We need to make an adjustment, ask for help if necessary. Then we need to repeat the process, which means we plan out another 90 days. See, most people will go 90 days, but they don't really think on the 90th day that they should be planning out another 90 days. And we just keep moving forward in 90-day blocks of time. You'll see this pattern repeated everywhere. If you go to university, the semesters, if you look at the creation, the seasons. If you take a look at a mother expecting a child, trimester, first trimester, second trimester, third trimester, and you realize in that analogy that where you start is arbitrary. You don't necessarily say, hey, guess what? It's the first of the month we're expecting. It's kind of arbitrary. Some of you will get that later. But it happens usually when it happens, not always planned on the first. Okay. So you can plan today. Today can be the starting date, the very first day, moving forward 90 days. But continue to go through that process. So 90 days from today, do you know where you want to be economically? Now, if you know where you want to be 90 days from today, how are we going to start getting there? There are some components to the why we do want to talk about. And the very first one, which is critical, it's the absolute kind of genesis point. It's the foundation. It's where everything kind of connects and begins, is belief. You need to believe. I guess we could say you need to believe, first of all, that it's possible, or you probably won't even try. You know, if your why is strong enough, you will do whatever it takes to figure out how. You'll go through those hoops, but you have to believe that it's possible. And so there's some fundamental points that we need to go over so that you can start building your level of belief. I give yourself a little scale, a little rating here, 1 to 10, with 10 being best, and we're going to cover 5 points. And I'm just going to ask you right now, as you're sitting here, wherever you are, if you're new, I don't expect you to be a 10 in any of these. You might not be even close to that, which is okay. Knowing where you're beginning is probably the single most important thing you will ever do. Just taking inventory. We can alter or improve those numbers over time, but we have to know where we're starting from. Does that make sense? Okay, so the very first one you heard Travis, and didn't Travis do just a brilliant job on network marketing? Give him another round. That was fantastic, Travis. Enjoy that very, very much. But it's network marketing. We have to become a solid 10 in our chosen profession, which is network marketing. So if I were sitting down with you today, doing a little coaching, a little personal one-on-one time, and I just said, when it comes to network marketing, your level of belief at it being the profession you're going to be aligned with for, who knows, the next 5, 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years of your life, how excited are you about being a part of the network marketing profession? And for some of you, that's just not a level of comfort today, is it? For some of you, this is new. For some of you, you've heard those stories. You know, for some, you're not really quite sure how to uncover or how to expose or how to basically counteract the things that are being said about the profession. But where have I found you? Just give yourself a number, 1 being lowest and 10 being highest. Where do you have your number today? And we need to take inventory so we can move forward. Now, the second key area here is, of course, the company. Specifically here, we have the company, which is Isagenix. Again, brand new people, how could you be a 10? I mean, what could you possibly have learned in a short period of time to cause you to become a 10? But over time, if you really want your why, that compelling why, to drive you forward, because if your why is strong enough, you'll do what? You'll figure out how. So if your why is that compelling, that strong, you need to have that solid 10 belief in network marketing. You also need to have the solid 10 belief in the company. But what do you know about the company? Do you know the rich history? Do you know about John Anderson? Do you know about Jim and Kathy Coover? Do you understand about the products and things that kind of relate to that? Do you appreciate where we've come from 10 years ago? Are you reading the periodicals? Do you check in with Isamail? Are you up to date? Are you plugged into the conferences? You know, are you there where you're just kind of growing your level of belief in the company from wherever it currently is with your ultimate destination, your goal to be a 10? That's where we should be going, obviously, the journey. But where are you right now? Just give yourself a number. Not a test. We're not going to embarrass anyone by asking where you are. If you're brand new, I wouldn't expect it to be very high. But we need to move toward a 10. Now, third point, products. Products. Very hard to believe this is possible if you don't believe in what you're actually marketing. This is obviously network marketing. We're taking your network, which I define as the number of contacts you currently have in your smartphone. That's your network. That's where most people store their network today. Take your smartphone, those are the people in your network. And you want to know who tapped into that one? Your provider. Have you ever noticed when you take that smartphone and you email someone, they put that little tag at the very bottom? Sent from an iPhone 3. That's so all your friends know you're cheap. Right? Very subtle. It's very subtle. I mean, Apple is just brilliant. iPhone 3, I mean, aren't they like 4, 5, 6 or something like that? The guy's got a 3. Has a 3, really? iPhone 3? It's your friends will call you and hassle you. You have a 3? Upgrade. But they tag it. Android tags it. Everybody tags it. They always say, to your network. They want your network to know. So we're just marketing to our network. It's all we're really doing, marketing to our network. But how do you feel about these products? How do you feel about the Isagenix chocolates? How do you feel about the protein shakes? How do you feel about Isagenix Supreme? How do you feel about, you know, the vitamins that we have, the daily essentials? How do you feel about these products? How do you feel? 1, 10, a few 6s, and a 4 or 5, right? No, but how do you feel? And so wherever you are, you need to have a number. And for some people, when they come in, they don't really understand the differences. They just don't. This is like a fine wine. You know, we were talking earlier, I was speaking to a few people at the back of the room, and I said, go to a supermarket, not even a wine store, go to a supermarket, just a supermarket where you buy food, and go to wherever they carry wine. Whether you drink wine or not isn't important. How you feel about it, just don't miss the point of the illustration. Just go to where the supermarket carries wine and look at the lowest priced red wine they carry in that store, and look at the highest priced red wine they carry in that store. And ask yourself, why would anyone pay this little, or why would anyone else pay this much? Why? It's a grocery store. It's not a wine store. It's a grocery store. How does a grocery store have a bottle of wine for $4 or $5, and that same store just a couple of shelves over has a bottle of wine for $45, $50, $60? A grocery store. Who's paying that kind of money? It's the same volume. You don't get any more. It's still red. It's wine. Why would anyone pay it? And you begin to appreciate that apparently, if you know things about wine, apparently there must be some difference between the boxed wine and the other wine, apparently. What do you know about the products? Where's your level of belief? How do you feel about network marketing? How do you feel about the company? How do you feel about the products? How do you feel about the fourth component, which is our compensation? Now, there's some tens. How do you feel about how you're paid? How do you feel? If you're new, how can you expect to feel or to have a level of belief of a 10? I can tell you, though, by the time Lynn Hagedorn is finished with session number 3, she has session number 1, and then I think number 2, and then number 3 on compensation, I believe most of you are going to see your numbers go 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 levels higher as you begin to understand the unique way that you're paid. This is a brilliant plan. I've not looked at all of them, but I've looked at enough of them to understand this is a brilliant plan. But how I feel about it, how Jim Coover feels about it, how the millionaires feel about it, may be completely different than how you feel about it. Fair statement? So wherever you are, just give yourself a number. Where's your level of belief today as it pertains to compensation? And we need to take that number wherever it is, and we need to go to work on those numbers until we get you up to a 10. And then last point, which is, of course, you. What do you think your chances are of succeeding in this profession? What do you think your chances are of being promoted to manager? What do you think your chances are of being promoted to director? What do you think your chances are of becoming an executive? What do you think your chances are of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stars all the way up to the stratosphere? What do you think your chances are? What do you think your chances are of being recognized on stage? What do you think your chances are of becoming one of the next Isagenix millionaires over some reasonable period of time for you? What do you think your chances are? You know, it's interesting. Somehow we can go through all of these points, and people can be 10s in various areas, and then we get down to point number 5, and guess what we usually find? It tends to be the lowest number we have. I mean, we think, okay, network marketing, I can learn, I can get beyond that. I can go pick up some books like The Next Millionaires by Paul Zane Pilzer. I can kind of learn more about it. I can pick up Business of the 21st Century by Robert Kiyosaki and kind of build my belief about the profession. You know, I can go pick up maybe a book I wrote called Future Choice and really understand fundamentally where we've come from and where we're going. There's some great books that have been written about the network marketing profession. I can get my level up to a 10. And I can come to enough of these conferences to really start getting my understanding and belief about the company up to a 10. I can go to home office. You go to home office, you walk in a 2, 3, 4, 5, you walk out a 7, 8, or 9, maybe even a 10. I mean, it's a pretty impressive place with some extraordinary people working there, agreed? Amazing. If you've been there, and if, by the way, if you haven't been there, you must make a plan to go some point in time. You know, the best time to go would be in January. They're holding an event there, and you could take a bus over and tour. I'm just saying. But my point is, how do you feel about that? And when we start going through some of these segments, are you willing to do the work? But we get down to that last point, and guess what we find with most people? Most people are finding it very difficult to believe enough in themselves. And so we've got to go to work on that. We've got to go to work on that. Now, I've had some unique experiences in my life, getting to meet some extraordinary people that have helped me tremendously. You know, recommending that right book at the right moment in time for me. Like I remember when someone actually put a copy in my hand of Think and Grow Rich. Extraordinary book. If you haven't read that, you may want to add that to your recommended list of reading. I remember when I picked up Dale Carnegie's book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, and how that touched and impacted my life. I remember seeing for the very first time the wisdom of Og Mandino on the pages of the greatest salesman in the world. It's extraordinary how some of these books have touched me and affected me and allowed me. The Magic of Believing by Bristol. Understanding what to do with money once you've acquired it by reading The Richest Man in Babylon by Clouse. Just these books that have come around, As a Man Thinketh by James Allen. You know, there's some extraordinary information to help us grow as people. But along my journey, I met a man named Paul J. Meyer. And I wouldn't expect for many of you, in fact, probably only a handful would have ever run across his name. But Paul J. Meyer ran, when he was living, the largest personal development company on this planet, a company called Success Motivation Institute, SMI, located down in Waco, Texas. Paul had sold his material on goal setting and planning and management leadership all over the world. Paul was an interesting man. He had a goal of running businesses without actually being there. I think on his letterhead it said something along the lines of owner of over 100 companies, president of none. That was Paul. Paul would hire some extraordinary people to work for him, and Paul was a brilliant man to sit around and just have conversation with. I'd like to share with you what Paul shared with me. I'm going to give this to you a couple of times because it's worthy of, again, being recorded. We're going to talk about this in our concluding few minutes here because this allowed me to really find my why. This allowed me to reach for it, to understand it, and to go for it with more gusto than I had ever gone for anything in my life, and by extension, to achieve it, and to be able to recognize the beauty in this simple recipe. Here it is. Paul J. Meyer said, whatever you vividly imagine, think about those words for a minute. Whatever you vividly imagine, what are you vividly imagining? Where do you want your life to be in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years? You know, sadly, too few of us are still dreaming. Too many of us have walked away back to the realities of life. Whatever you vividly imagine, Paul said. And then he continued by saying, whatever you vividly imagine and ardently desire. Now there's a word we don't tend to use every day in language, ardently desire. It's almost like you have to grit your teeth when you say it. I want that goal. I mean, for me, I needed that $400 a month. It was just that simple. It was not a choice. For some of you, you're thinking, yeah, it'd be nice. That's not ardently desiring something. What is it that you're vividly imagining and you really want that goal? Whatever you vividly imagine, ardently desire. And then he added, sincerely believe. Remember what I alluded to earlier? But do you think it's possible? Because if you don't think it's possible, the fact that this is an extraordinary profession that I've had the privilege of being involved in now for 29 years, the fact that Isagenix has been absolutely tearing it up for the last 10, almost 11 years now, the mere fact that we've got, in my opinion, the finest food on the planet, the most extraordinary way to pay people, does any of that matter if you don't think you can do this? And the short answer is no. So he said, whatever you vividly imagine, ardently desire, sincerely believe, and here comes the key component number 4, enthusiastically act upon. Enthusiasm. In theos, the breath of God. Can you imagine how God might do something? Think about that when you start to play around with this little formula. Would he wake up in the morning when he wanted to, or would he wake up on purpose? Would he do something with intention, or would just say, it's okay. It'll work out. There's tomorrow. What do you think? Enthusiastically act upon, take action. Most of us are not taking enough action. The single greatest obstacle, in my opinion, separating you from where you currently are to where you actually want to be is activity. Activity, activity. Whether it's the body you're living in, the bank account you own, the size of your business, or anything else, it's just pure, unadulterated activity. Most of us just don't move enough. Whatever you vividly imagine, ardently desire, sincerely believe, and enthusiastically act upon, here came the payoff, the reward. If we don't have a reward, we won't pay the price. So the reward must inevitably come to pass. It's a promise, it's a guarantee, must inevitably come to pass. Can you imagine being that sure of something in your life that you just knew it was a certainty yet to unfold? It's like when I got up at 3 o'clock in the morning yesterday. Yes, it was yesterday, 3 o'clock in the morning. It was early. And I knew I had to get on a plane. And I knew the plane would be there. And then the plane would take me here. And then I would have to get up this morning. Early. Where's Travis? Early. I told my family back home, you can watch me on television, 7:30 in the morning. That's early. I'd already be up and dressed. Think about that. Must inevitably come to pass. Whatever you vividly imagine, ardently desire, sincerely believe, and enthusiastically act upon must inevitably come to pass. I got to tell you something. You're in for a rare treat as these next 2 days unfold. The speakers that are coming, the information you're going to learn, how it's all been kind of put together like a puzzle so that each piece comes together and you're sitting there and you're watching this unfold, and then eventually as you begin to leave, as tomorrow comes to a conclusion, you're going to see this extraordinary picture of what's possible for you. But the question is, are you willing to pay the price to go for it? Are you willing to pay the price? Are you willing to do what it actually takes to seek out and find your why, to uncover what that is? And I promise you, at some point in time, I don't want to downplay, really having that reason that drives you. The money is interesting in the very beginning, which is why I say go for the money. But over time, eventually the money that was just used to pay some bills, guess what happened to those bills? They got paid off. And guess what happened when you wanted that car? You acquired the car. And then you decided where you wanted to live, and you got that, and you decided how you wanted to dress, and that took care of itself, and you decided how you wanted life to unfold, and that was handled. And so at one moment in time, you recognize, you know what? If I just keep going for the money, there's plenty of money there. This needs to be some other compelling reason why. Maybe for you, it's touching the lives of other people. Maybe for you, it's seeing how much you can accomplish. I mean, how much can you do? How big a business can you build? How many lives can you impact? How many millionaires can you help create? How many countries can you travel to, giving presentations to your own teams and to all those others that joined you? Those can be some really interesting reasons that get you up early and keep you up late, that allow you to do one more call and yet another and then still another, just driving you forward. Sometimes it's just a little unique a wager between two friends. I got a buddy of mine, they had a little wager. That was their compelling reason why. They wanted to get some weight off, and it was a pretty interesting story. Very simple. Weigh in, 1 year later, they were going to weigh in again. Here were the prizes. Tell me how affected this would, or how interested you would be in the prize. The loser, whoever didn't get the most weight off, had to buy the winner's wife the car of her choice. Oh wait, there's more. 2 first-class round-trip tickets to Hong Kong, and $10,000 in shopping, cash. Now, that's pretty compelling. But here's the interesting thing. Some of us, weight is a challenge. It's always been a challenge. And so my buddy, he taught me something powerful. Let me allow this story not to just be something I put into the presentation, but allow it to affect you. Because he found there were 2 elements to this that needed to be put into place for him to actually get what he wants. The first was the goal, the reward. Most of us think in terms of the goal and the reward. If I get here, I get this, right? I get the money, I get the house, I get the girl, I get the life, I get to travel, this is what I get if I achieve that. But very few of us ever put in the penalty for not achieving it. The penalty. It's an interesting way to actually plan. It's an interesting way to allow your why to actually drive you forward. And I think personally you need both the carrot and the stick if you're truly interested in moving your life forward. Now, I could tell you he was from Texas, which is true. I could tell you that being from Texas, he probably would bleed red as a Republican, which you could probably also assume. I could also tell you that this occurred when Monica Lewinsky and the whole Bill Clinton thing was going on, who he was not a particular fan of at that time. One could only imagine why. And I can also tell you what his pain goal was. He told all of his friends, if I fail to achieve this goal, win this prize, get the car for my wife, the tickets so she can go off and fly and have a good time over there, here's what I'm about to do. I'm going to write a personal check for $10,000 to the Bill Clinton Legal Relief Fund. Yeah. And he told me, I didn't care about the money. I could afford to buy the car. I could afford to send her on the plane. I could afford the shopping. It wasn't going to be that big a deal, but I was not going to write that check. It wasn't going to happen. I'm not going to write the check. He said 4 or 5 days before the end of the goal, he just didn't eat. He literally just starved himself, won by just a couple of pounds. He said it was the Bill Clinton check that drove him, not the car. See, sometimes we have the reward, but the reward doesn't drive us. We need the penalty if we don't get there. So you may want to kind of contemplate that as you move through the day. What is it if I succeed? And what is it if I don't get up? What is it if I don't make the calls? What happens if I don't actually follow through? What happens if I don't keep my word? What happens if I don't commit? If your why is strong enough, you'll figure out how, but a strong, compelling reason why means that it's going to move you. You understand it. You can appreciate it. You can enjoy it. It's been a unique 29 years for me. In the very beginning, it was simply go for the money. Over time, it's changed so many times, I've literally lost track. Here for me now, it's to help as many people as I possibly can. I'm here to do as much as I can with as many people as I can in as many places as I can for as long as I can. So if you want to know why I got up at 3 a.m. in the morning and caught a flight out of Seattle to be here in Kansas City, it's because that's what actually moves me, to see what's possible and to see what we can do with this unique company as we take it all over the world. Isn't that going to be extraordinary to take this company all over the world? How many of you are interested in coming along? Well, as we do, we're going to need to keep track of our why. So let me just conclude this portion of our presentation by suggesting to you as strongly as I possibly can, if your why is strong enough, you'll figure out how. But until you find that deep, gut-wrenching feeling that moves you forward like nothing else, go for the money. Just go for the money. Just pick a number and go for the money. It's not that hard. Don't make this that hard. And by the way, as a personal favor, if we're having lunch together, or dinner, or a beverage, and the wait person comes to the table and says, "Can I take your order?" Just pick something. It's not hard. If it's not what you want, you can send it back, and there's another meal coming in about 3, 4, 4, 5 more hours. Not hard. Just go for the money. Go for the money. It'll be fun. Anyway, listen, that's the why. Now tomorrow, for those of you that are watching here live, tomorrow we're going to talk about my favorite subject of all time. We're going to talk about prospecting. We're going to talk about connecting. We're going to talk about how do you go out and find all of the people that you will need to take your vision to where you want it to be. You know, whatever you vividly imagine, well, where are you in your mind? You're going to need people. You're going to need an army probably of people. How are you going to create that? And we're going to give you some strategies, some very simple ideas, and some things that I promise you, you can use immediately. Sound good?